everyone, and welcome back to DBR on CBR. That is right, it is time once again for Dragon Ball Rewatch. And if you are watching along, we hope you are watching along on Hulu or Crunchyroll. And you can always read along in the official translation by Viz Media. Once again, we are your hosts. My name is Alex.
I'm Sam.
And I'm John. And yeah, we're at episode 15. Look out for launch. Japanese viewers got this first on June 4th, 1986. Americans got it September 7th, 2001. We're adapting two manga chapters, Who's That Girl and Nothing to Sneeze At. This is basically the continuation of last episode. Goku and Krillin are trying to get Master Roshi a date, which leads to them meeting Launch, a girl with a very peculiar problem. She turns evil whenever she sneezes.
The first Super Saiyan.
I mean, it's a real Jekyll and Hyde kind of situation, right? It's one we never really get the backstory for, as far as I know.
It kind of always throws me because you'd think they would be setting up something with Great Ape, because before sort of Vegeta arrives, Launch is the only person who could really understand Goku's plight, but they never do that. They never really bring that up, that, oh yeah, we have the same problem. Also, Sam, I thought of you with this episode because I remember last episode you said, I'm so glad we're out of the desert now. What's the first thing Goku and Krillin do? Straight back to the desert.
Straight
and you know
back.
that Western thing, and I love, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, there's the beautiful background that John has, which has my favorite Akira Toriyama cameo in all of Dragon Ball. And he's crossed out, which means he's been, let's just say, apprehended. That's purely for the anime.
Yeah,
it doesn't have that in the manga.
I gotta throw it out here. A lot of the stuff with Launch is so Lupin the Third in its energy. Like, there's very much like, oh my god, what is her name? Fujiko?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, it's very Fujiko of her with like the machine gun and the way she interacts with things. I love that we are apparently in Trigun for like the first half of the episode. Like, yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff happening. I love cowboys. I love Western aesthetic things, so this was right up my alley.
It's a surprisingly well-realized parody of the genre. You could tell someone on the team really likes it. And yeah, it's really interesting that the whole bar and train robbery doesn't happen in the manga. We go straight to Goku hearing a call for help. Goku just fights the police out of nowhere in the manga, effectively. It's just quite fun.
Do you feel sorry for those guys? Because, I mean, as far as they're concerned, they've found their quarry. They found a notorious and prolific thief who carries a bounty of 2 million zenny and counting. Do you feel sorry that they get the crap kicked out of them, by some strange boy?
I mean, at least they got the crap kicked out of them now, and not in like 5 episodes where Goku would have just crippled them. This was a survivable beating.
That is very true. I do love the whole lead up to it with Krillin just like being like, they have guns and handcuffs, and Goku being like, cool, let's roll. Let's get in there. I got this.
I love that Launch says, I always get scared when I'm looking at guns straight afterwards, which is just my favorite line.
There are a lot of great lines in this episode and a lot of great interactions, especially like even before we get to like the meat of the Launch stuff, when we have Goku and Krillin interacting and Goku explaining that he doesn't really know still to this day how to tell gender by just looking at a person. He has to touch them first, and Krillin immediately is like, I'm a boy, let's not go there.
What I also like is that we get the thing of the Nimbus in this episode, where apparently, like, if you're hanging on to someone, you can still stay on it. So technically, all this time, Goku could have had Bulma on his shoulders, and it would have been fine.
I mean, Bulma's taller. Think how awkward that would be. She would partially be like through the Nimbus as she was holding on for dear life on Goku. Yeah, it's I also like how inconsistent Dragon Ball is about guns, because we've established that Goku can like take on, I mean, it hurts, but he can get shot multiple times. And it goes even more, I think, Looney Tunes with the ending of this episode, because you literally see bullet holes in our three characters.
Well, they're lumped, so the shell is lodged in them as well. They actually you can see like bits of the bullet, which is great. So it does imply that in this universe, guns are just useless. Then you have the police chase, where they're firing. The police are on these little bikes while Launch is on an electric unicycle. And the first company that makes that, I'm buying 6 because they're amazing. But they're missing her, despite having a straight line of fire and being 2 feet away.
It's Stormtrooper aiming at its finest. Like you can't, you gotta have that. Like we have to miss for some reason thing. And that chase scene is actually really cool. Like with Launch literally launching herself off of a slope on that unicycle thing, and everyone chase. It's a really good chase scene.
I can see why they added it. Again, this is another example, I think, of the filler adding a lot to the episode, because giving Launch more build-up does make Goku intervening with the police more interesting, because you get that dramatic irony more heavily of the audience knowing that Launch can change and Goku not. I think it makes the jokes later on hit a lot harder as well because of that. Because you know as an audience, oh, she's going to sneeze at some point soon, and what's going to happen. Where in the manga, you don't get that as much because they jump into the police showdown.
And I love the Western opening. I love the idea. It's very like, it's almost to the point and almost and long enough where you're like, I'm watching an episode of Dragon Ball, right? And it's like, because there's no characters that we've seen before. And it really sets the mood, and it's really a fun diversion. I kind of wish that we would get a little more of this kind of, Alyx was mentioning Trigon, or kind of this like almost proto Cowboy Bebop kind of vibe.
Yeah, like when I was watching the scene at first, I was like, I think it's like the first episode of Cowboy Bebop where you have like the couple that's pretending the woman is pregnant and she has like the drugs in her dress, and they're in that very Western bar, and it sang Cowboy Bebop to me. And I'm kind of wondering if this episode had any impact on like later anime to give them that distinct Western feel. I do also want to talk about Launch's design really quick. I love her design. I think it's so good. Like it's something about her big ribbon and like her and the way her clothes fit and just how her shift happens with her hair color. I think it's a really good design.
Yeah, no, I love Launch's design. Launch is, you thought you were bad with the Amshar's episode. I'm going to be so bad with Launch for the next couple of episodes because she's one of my favorite characters. And I think part of it is her design. She looks like so distinctive, yet still kind of blends into that world. So it does really sell that why is Launch so hard to find? Because if you weren't looking for her, you probably wouldn't be able to tell who she was. And I love that when they show you the change, like she kind of like smears across the frame a little bit before snapping back. It's a lovely little effect, and I love the noise they have for it because it's very clearly another Toriyama Ultraman shout out because it's basically an Ultraman transformation noise. It's such fun and so many good comic setups. I like her voice in this dub as well. The kind of Rhonda Shear kind of thing they got going on with the high-pitched giggle and stuff.
And then that switch to that deeper, much more like intense, angry voice of hers.
It's almost like a New Yorker voice.
Yeah. As a New Yorker, yeah, that's what it sounds like when I'm not dropping my accent.
It's got it's got a bit of the Harley Quinns about it as well at points.
If you ever play Budokai 3, not Budokai Tenkaichi 3, but Budokai 3,
Oh,
which
wow.
is available on the Dragon Ball Z HD collection on the PS3 and 360, the capsule store is hosted by Launch. And occasionally she'll sneeze and turn into the other Launch and kind of be more brusque, like, hey, you're gonna buy something? And that's, having sunk in hours and hours of my life into Budokai 3, which is maybe my favorite Dragon Ball video game of all time. That's kind of the association I get with Launch.
I love that. I'm just going with like, does Launch changing personalities count as a transformation? Because the narrator refers to it as a transformation, I believe. So is it a transformation in the Dragon Ball sense?
I wouldn't say it's a combat transformation because it's involuntary, whereas Roshi's max power is a voluntary, thing. It really is a Jekyll and Hyde. It's just that it just so happens that the trigger happens to be a sneeze. And it's always fun seeing how they, what setup they can get to get her to sneeze. Like somebody will like accidentally blow pepper in the air, or like her own strands of hair will tickle her nose. They always come up, and I almost feel like they always come up with something a little different every time they institute the sneeze.
I love when she's on the unicycle, gets tickled by her own hair, because again, it is structured like the classic Looney Tunes joke of her going, oh no, change. This episode is full of like classic little slapstick and comedy, almost vaudeville comedy beats they keep pulling off, and they pull each one of them off perfectly. It's really amazing.
I love the idea that the woman that Goku and Krellin pick for lack of a better term, to bring back to Roshi is someone that he can never be with because at a moment's notice, she'll turn into someone that will just absolutely kick his butt. 7 Ways to Sunday. And on some level, I assume Roshi probably enjoys it, but
He tries to make the best of it.
he does because she's a staple for the rest of the series.
And next episode, we'll see he does not care for his life.
I'm also gonna admit really quick, the underwear that Roshi puts all of them in, for some reason having sizes for Krillin and Goku, which is
Don't
just
ask.
a little weird. Don't ask. I actually really like the design of it on launch. Like, I think it is so coquettishly it's so weird to be here being like the fan service works, but the fan service does work. It's so coquettishly sexy and not in a way that feels exploitative, despite the fact that it is in context. Like, it looks good on her, which is so weird to say. Like, I love the high tops. I love the pink frills. I love Goku and Krillin looking so confused as to why they're wearing it.
It is a really nice moment. I also do like the joke of Roshi having them all in it, because I get the feeling that must have been something that was a joke with an editor somewhere. It has that vibe of, can we put her in it? Yeah, why don't we put all of them in it as well? Yeah, I kind of point out when he says it's excuses, it's turtle hermit battle armor. It does look a bit like Bardock's outfit if it was lingerie. So maybe he's not lying. Maybe that's where Bardock got it from.
It's quicker in the manga. Like, there's a whole setup for it in the manga, and it's basically a page of everybody else in the outfit, as opposed to it making up the last like 2-3 minutes of the episode. So yeah, they definitely get more mileage out of it. I remember well, yeah, go ahead.
It also gives a piece of I think is one of the best pieces of animation in the episode, when she's shooting the gun and the light from the shots is lighting up her face, so you can see the real color of her eyes as she's shooting them. It's such a weirdly good piece of animation in this weird little off-brand scene.
And it also has something I really like. If you look really closely at where the bullets are coming out of the gun, you can just see the edge of the cell being moved up. There's a very faint shimmer, because it's obviously a cell on top of another cell, and they're just slowly pulling it up. I love when you can see moments like that in old animation. It's because you usually go, that's totally logical how you would do that in a way that doesn't kill the animator. So being able to see it, it's really nice. You won't see it, like, you have to really be... if you put it on like 10th speed, you'll be able to see just the little line.
John going through this episode frame by frame, just like...
launch.
Yeah, it's like the Zapruder film. He wants to know where the magic bullets come from.
That is a deep cut joke.
Also, another thing
no JFK fans in the chat.
Tell us your theory about the grassy knoll in the comments.
Can I point out another thing I love about the underwear bit with Roshi is it does kind of sell him as being this weirdo who has been isolated a bit, which I quite like. It takes the sting out of some of his weirdness. It makes him a bit more like Goku in that, yeah, he's boundary crossing and a pervert, but it's more because he's socially inept, because he's been a monk for all these years and has been living on this island alone. So his ideas, I like it. It softens him a little bit. And the scenes of Roshi in this are really fun. Because you have Krillin being the gremlin little suck up, Goku being an idiot, and Launch just being generally confused by him.
Yeah, and I also think that, like, I like that we never see Roshi succeed with a woman. And again, part of me suspects he kind of enjoys it. And that's something that we see in Dragon Ball, and to a lesser degree in Dragon Ball Super, of him just getting slapped left, right, and center because of how frankly much he deserves it. But yeah, because of that ineptitude and the idea that he has lingerie for himself and his pupils. I don't know. He's a weird dude.
Yeah, it's like it does make him easy to deal with, because he's being called on his stuff a lot more in these early episodes, which they kind of drop later on. It's kind of a sort of comedy d'arte thing with the Harlequin, in that he may get a momentary victory, but he always gets hit at the end and always loses. So he's always punished for his indiscretions, which means you can laugh at him more because he is being shown to be a freak, basically.
And And of course, since Krillin is being a gremlin, he's also being the #1 wingman right now. Like, we got to talk about how hard Krillin is wingmanning just for the idea of getting trained. Like, and even he says, like, oh man, maybe there's more to him than just being a filthy old man at one point. Like, Krillin knows what's up, but he's going to play into it. And I think that that's actually kind of hilarious. And it does set up Krillin as being more antagonistic in these very early episodes. He may not be trying to outright kill Goku, but he is trying to kill his career.
He still looks like a gremlin, though, and it worries me. There's so many shots in this where you'll just see Krillin in shot and like, oh, when I sleep tonight, that's what I'm seeing when I get sleep paralysis. Just that little Krillin.
New sleep paralysis demon just dropped.
Yeah.
The official Dragon Ball sleep paralysis demon.
Yeah. I do think that Krillin isn't as kiss-assy as, I mean, we see a bit of his conscience where he just reflexively, instinctively tells Launch to just change inside. And Roshi's like, what? Like, why would you do that? And it's like, he isn't as enabling as I think he believes himself to be, which is good. You know, we start to see a little bit of that conscience, even though it's, we're still a couple episodes off of him and Goku being willing to call themselves friends.
It's a fun dynamic they've got going on. I quite like how they very quickly, because we've lost Oolong and we've lost Bulma and Yamcha. They've set up a new dynamic very, very quickly, but it's a very different dynamic, which I think is amazing when you sort of sit back and think about it, in that we basically got rid of half of the cast and have totally switched around everyone's position to the new characters, and it's nearly seamless.
It's a big creative swing. I mean, we've seen Roshi before, but only in like 2 or 3 episodes in a decidedly supporting role. Krillin, they couldn't quite, I think, make out how competent he was in the preceding episode, because it's all filler when he shows up in the preceding episode for the most part, with him basically being the Roadrunner. And Launch, of course, is a completely new dynamic. Yeah, it's a big creative risk, but God bless Toriyama. It takes off.
Yeah, so I really do wonder, like, if you were sort of a Shonen Jump writer today, if you went into the editors and like, so we finished arc 1, I'm going to get rid of pretty much all of the main cast, and we're having all these new people come in. I really can't see them greenlighting that unless you were already a really established name.
I mean, not to #spoilers, there is exactly one Shonen Jump manga that has done that relatively recently. I don't know if I should spoil it or not, because the anime version of that is a little bit farther off, because the first season of that wrapped last year. But for anybody who reads, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a thing that is happening with that particular manga. So, but it is not very common. Like, you're not going to see that very often.
I mean, you look at Demon Slayer. How many characters join Tanjiro when he starts the Hashira training arc? Most of them.
Most of them.
They have, or of course, My Hero Academia, which is all about training. It's the same class of UA students throughout. Same teachers.
Naruto, One Piece.
Especially when you factor in that Bulma was the big part of the marketing for the first arc. All of the promotional images feature Bulma. Now she's gone. She's in the desert with Yamcha. Maybe dead. We don't fully know.
Yeah, so we know she's safe, because the end credits through the end of this entire series will spotlight her with art straight from the manga in each frame. So we know.
That is one thing I'm slightly disappointed about. The fact that we still have the splashes is still Oolong and the ending is still Bulma. I kind of wish we'd have swapped those out. It's a total nitpick, but it would have been cool to see them change that up with the new characters coming in.
I think it's interesting to kind of talk about Launch in contrast to Bulma, because Launch, when she's Super Saiyan Launch, which is just what I'm going to call her now, Super Saiyan Launch is much more of an action girl. She's willing and ready to get into fights all the time. Meanwhile, Bulma is much more of the brains of the outfit, but she's very much not willing to get her own hands dirty 90% of the time. And I think it's interesting to set up a very different dynamic with a female character, especially because even base form Launch is much more of a homemaker than even Bulma is. Like, Bulma will evolve into that at the end of Dragon Ball Z, but she's there. She's much quieter and more demure and more like sweet and you, Goku? Like that kind of thing. And I think it's interesting because Bulma doesn't fit either of those archetypes. And then we have this one woman who is too. So,
But even in both of them, she's much more emotionally distant from all of the boys. While she's clearly like the homemaker, she hasn't attached to them like their children. They are Roshi's kids, and she is here to. She was taught into training, but you sort of get the feeling that she's putting up with them because they are Roshi's children, not because she has any emotional attachment to them. Unlike Bulma, who, despite trying to be sort of cold and distant, ends up getting emotionally involved with everybody she encounters for whatever reason.
kind of Roshi's home care nurse at a certain point.
We also know that the launches are like on some level aware of each other, which is like also never quite clearly defined how much the other knows what the other is up to or just exists. But yeah, it's a weird dynamic, even internally for a single character that we never quite fully
They're
explored.
aware that the other exists, it seems, but they don't share memories because they don't see because base form launch seems to be able to kind of be like, oh, there's a bunch of money in my bag, so I guess I stuck up a bank. Like, she's not sure what happened. She just knows that her Super Saiyan form does bad things. Like, that's kind of all they've got between them.
It gets complicated because of we sort of get a clear idea that Launch has had several police showdowns at this point. So it's unclear how much base Launch remembers and how much she's been told. Because I must have robbed a bank is clearly something she got from the police officers talking about the train. So we're not entirely sure what she knows or if it's just because she's a famous bounty hunter, so she's heard about herself. But she does know the sneezing swaps around, which is interesting.
To bring it back to Jekyll and Hyde, Henry Jekyll is aware is aware throughout the text that Edward Hyde exists, and vice versa. But so they're just like, well, he just does him, and I just do me.
I'm also now realizing this is actually a more accurate Jekyll and Hyde than most adaptations of Jekyll and Hyde are.
Yeah.
Because Hyde isn't really a monster in the books. He is portrayed to be he's evil, but quite charming.
He's also portrayed to be like smaller, as opposed to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where he's a Hulk man.
Yeah, or everything where they just make him Frankenstein for some reason.
Yeah.
There was a BBC show called Jekyll, like a million years ago, and I don't know if anybody but me cared about it. But I think that kind of shows that where Hyde is charming in that kind of more aggressive and gruff way, and Jekyll Hyde is a reflection of the things that Jekyll really wishes he could be. Yeah. And I think you guys are right. This is a very good example of a good Jekyll and Hyde story. And also, sidebar, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, excellent cinema. Not apologizing.
The only thing I remember about Jekyll shows, I think, was it Neil Morrissey as the lead? It was a guy who only did sitcoms before, so I could never take it seriously. So I was expecting it's the same with the guy who did Breaking Bad, same idea. But I think it's time before I go into some final thoughts, and I have two of them to point out to you. One, Launch is wearing Nike shoes. They've got the swoosh on them. Things you wouldn't get away with today because they are very protective of their copyright. This is
just do it.
Yep, this is before Japan regulated some of these things, so tough luck. Also, anyone explain why Roshi has his toilet labeled? When Goku goes to find him, there's a sign on the toilet declaring it's a toilet.
Well, he has guests.
Does Roshi have many amnesiacs visit his house to the point he's like, well, I should start labeling things?
Maybe it's for Turtle. Maybe it's so Turtle remembers.
Can Turtle read?
I think we might see him with a newspaper later in the series or something. I feel like he's a literate reptile.
Maybe it's for that alligator guy who just hangs out.
Maybe Pilaf. Maybe it was after Pilaf came. He's like, I need to start labeling these rooms so the intruders. But yes, any final thoughts on Look Out for Launch?
We're getting closer. We're getting closer to the tournament, which,
it's coming.
If you were listening last week, I'm all about that tournament. So I'm very excited.
Final thoughts. I'm so excited that Launch is here. Because I have foreknowledge of the future of this series, I'm sad that she won't be here forever. But like I really like the new dynamic that's being set up. I think it's got a lot of promise to it. I think it's very funny, and I love the Looney Tunes stuff. And there's going to be a lot more Looney Tunes stuff coming up.
Oh yeah, we're still very much in comedy Dragon Ball at the moment. We're edging towards bigger, but we're still very much comedic.
But I think that is all we have for today, folks. So we want to just say a big thank you for welcoming Launch into our lives with us. And If you are watching along, please remember to watch on Crunchyroll and Hulu, read along in the official Viz Media translation, and we will see you next time on Dragon Ball. We have been your hosts. Once again, I'm Alyx.
I'm Sam.
And I'm John.
And we'll see you next time on Dragon Ball.